Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Searching for Political Identity. My name is Brian Escow, and I don't even know who I am. See, I don't know who I am. I can't even say my own name. No, it's a pleasure to be with you, which seems to be my tagline, but it's real. It really is a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad you're here. I'm grateful that you're here. You know, I announced that I'm voting for Trump. My online presence is growing. Doors are opening up, and it felt right. It feels right. Maybe this conversation did have an effect on me. And in this growth spurt that I've been having in the last 4 weeks, one of my longtime friends from Twitter, a Democrat, a brilliant guy, said, "Hey, Brian, I'd love to come on the show. We've been teasing that we might, get together at some point, but let me see if I can persuade you." Essentially, that's what we'll sell it as, not to vote for Trump. And so that's what we did. And John Bogley is a videographer who's worked in DC for, I don't know, 20 plus, 25 years, 30 years almost. And he is on the inside of politics. He's really well studied. And that's clear. It's been clear from the comments he's been leaving on my post for 3 years. So he's really been a highly valuable contact. And we spoke for more than an hour. Frankly, he spoke for more than an hour on the economy, on Trump's economy, trying to make the point to me why he's not responsible for the things that went well, and he actually is responsible for negative impacts. So the point being that Trump, in his opinion, is a great salesman, but that I'm buying a shitty product. And that's the point. And next time we agreed that we would do this again, and he would come back, and at which point we'd talk about social issues, we'd talk about foreign policy, we'd talk about January 6th, the 2020 election. We didn't get to a lot of areas. It was less of a back and forth conversation, more of a, I won't use the word lecture, but it was a deep dive on the economy is what it ended up being. And like I said to him at the end of the conversation, I can extrapolate the point you're making about the economy to these other areas. Nonetheless, we're committed to reconnecting in the near future, definitely before the election, and see where I'm at. So did he successfully knock me out of my certainty that I want to vote for Trump? He did a hell of a job. He's a very talented man in that respect. And he, one of the points he makes throughout this conversation is that the Democrats do such a piss poor job of countering Trump. So really interesting conversation. He did most of the talking, somewhere in the 20-minute mark probably is where he took over. And I don't say that pejoratively. I'm just giving you a heads up. We kind of chatted, had some banter, 20 minutes getting loose. And then he went in on the economy and he didn't relent. And he went for Trump's jugular and he just laid it out chapter and verse. And it was, that's persuasive, guys. That's persuasive. And it's a far cry, like I said, from what we hear from the Democrats. So a lot to think about. If I were to be in a voting booth right now, I'd still vote for Trump. So I'll reflect. I owe it to myself and to the country to soberly reflect on my decision. And this was a fantastic conversation. And I think that's about it for the intro. So thank you so much for being here. And I will see you guys next week for another episode. Take care. John, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Nice to finally get to talk to you, Brian.
Really is. So the only prepared note I have to kick our conversation off is to say that the quality of your comments, first of all, let me say, we've been following each other since I've been on Twitter, basically 3.5 years. And I don't know if you've been, listening to all my podcasts, but you've been aware of what I'm doing on my podcast in that same time period. And you've really been there and stuck by me and contributed significantly to the conversations that I'm having. And I just want to say the quality of your comments is what makes it such an honor to that you have stuck with me and to be here with you today. So I just want to recognize, regardless of where I'm going directionally, politically, if I'm even going anywhere at all, is the quality. I have to recognize your quality is like a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. This is good stuff. I really have to start by saying that because the audience should know, it's interesting to connect with a random friend from Twitter, but
yeah,
you are one. I want to start by recognizing the quality of your contributions. They're really knowledgeable. It's like it's almost incredible, actually. So got to get to know you a little bit before we kind of get into how you can perhaps give me some guidance and help me with what I'm going through and talk me through what I'm going through. But
Absolutely.
it makes me wonder how you become so knowledgeable, how much reading you must do, and what your life is. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. So yeah, to answer your question, I'm a video producer in DC, director producer. So I've been in the room with every president since George H.W. Bush, Tucker Carlson, just about any political pundit you can think of. I've probably met them or worked with them or been somewhere near them at an event. So I've gotten to be privy to a lot of inside information in addition to the public facing stuff. So I've done interviews with George W. Bush's energy czar, back in the early days of green energy, and he talked about why the Bush administration didn't embrace green energy at the same time that Germany was really going full bore with it. And he said it's because we've got a lot of states that are sitting on this mineral coal, and if we turn hard left now and go full green energy, that is going to become worthless. So we need to, even though we know it's a dirtier fuel, we need to tap that resource. And that's the sort of thing that you don't hear necessarily being talked about like on TV, just like that blatant truth of this is the real reason why. And so I've really been lucky in my career. I've been doing this since 1999. So, pre 2011, 2001, 9/11, 2001, where, the world was very different before that. But yeah, getting to see things before then and how things have kind of culminated after 9/11, into, how divided we are now. It's a really interesting thing to be kind of on the inside of, from a professional standpoint. From a personal standpoint, my father was lieutenant governor of Maryland back in 78 to 82. And so I grew up around politics, didn't care about politics at all. I considered myself, libertarian in my 20s. I voted for, the environment, but also, gay marriage and legalization of marijuana and other drugs. And neither the Democrats or the Republicans had embraced any of that yet. The libertarians had.
Right. So,
I was very kind of open-minded, progressive-minded, even though I was raised conservative in a conservative family, a very religiously conservative family. So, my politics have been informed my whole life. They didn't necessarily resonate with me, which is probably why I didn't really get involved in politics. But then my profession thrust me into it, and I'm part of it, every day, or at least a couple times a week.
Wow. What is one or two of the top most interesting experiences you've had professionally, would you say?
Outside of politics, I got stiff-armed by Joe Namath.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Jersey boy. You might appreciate that. Yeah, Joe Namath. This is when he hit on that sideline reporter.
Oh yeah, Susie.
He was Susie Colbert. Yeah, he was like 10 sheets to the wind. He was doing this this corporate gig. It was like a meet and greet thing, and he had a bottle of white wine. We had to keep his chilled wine going. Yeah, it was he had a bottle all day long next to him. It wasn't just one bottle. We had to keep refreshing.
It was a permanent bottle.
Yeah, there was a permanent bottle. And I don't remember if he had a glass or he was drinking right out of it. But But yeah, I mean, he must have met, 300 people, and gave each person, a personal handshake and talked to them for a couple minutes. And so towards the end of the day, we're wrapping up, and there was this one woman that he kind of hit it off with. That was one of the people that came in to meet him. And she was kind of hanging around. And so after everyone kind of leaves, it's just us, we're breaking all the equipment down in the room. And he and she are just having this really nice kind of, up close conversation. That they're this far apart from each other. And there's a cable that is going right up in between them, like right through their feet. So we're completely wrapped up. Everything in the room is completely wrapped up except for this one cable. Everyone had avoided getting this cable. So I was kind of the young man on the totem pole. So they were like, "All right, John, it's your job to go get that." So I'm like wrapping this cable up, and I don't want to because it was probably an audio cable. It had like a big chunky metal end on it, so I didn't want to kind of drag it. It was like a tile floor, so it would have just made this like nasty scraping sound as it went between their legs. So I'm like getting closer to them as I'm wrapping up, and I'm now like going a little bit slower because I'm getting really close. I'm hoping they just sort of see me coming and decide to part a little bit, and that didn't happen at all. So I'm like, okay, I've got to say something, or I'm gonna just let that cable drag. So I'm about to say something, and all of a sudden, Joe Namath just doesn't even look at me, just right in the chest, just like he had done to every line a million times. And that was a meaty palm. Like his hand was it was like a 25-pound hand. And it stopped me dead in my tracks. He never took his eyes off the girl either. He just kept his focus. And I literally just stood there until their conversation was over.
That's amazing.
Everyone else was like loading the trucks up and stuff. And I'm just like standing there, me and Joe Namath and his new love.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was fun. I got to meet, a lot of athletes, Michael Jordan when they bought the Wizards. This was an interesting story. I got to meet two out of the three, the two surviving members of Nirvana.
No shit, my favorite band of all time.
Same, yeah. They were coming up when I was in high school. So I mean, those seminal years, your high school bands, your high school.
That's amazing. Music. That's crazy because that's so amazing because I became completely enamored, if that's the right word, with Nirvana in high school, and it changed my life for the better or for the worse. But so that's crazy that we have that parallel experience.
Yeah. So I got to meet Dave Grohl. We actually were doing a Foo Fighters show at the Black Cat, which is a small club in DC. Dave Grohl is a part owner of the Black Cat, and so they were doing. This is when they were like. This was like around their third album. I mean, they were like, really kind of at the height of their powers. And it was a private show for, family and friends and like other people involved with the Black Cat, the other owners and stuff. And so I had a t-shirt from the very first Foo Fighters concert. Because I was a huge Nirvana fan, I heard that Dave Grohl was starting up a new band and he was going on tour with Mike Watt, which is the bassist from this old punk band called the Minutemen. And Mike Watt had this album. He's just a bassist though. He doesn't sing, but a whole bunch of like, artists from the time were on, on vocals for all the singles that they had. And it's like Evan Dando from the Lemonheads did one, and a bunch of different people. So Dave Grohl had started the Foo Fighters. I don't think they had a single song out that you could hear, but all we knew was it was Dave Grohl.
Right.
So we got tickets to this show. This tour starts up, and by the time they get to DC, people knew who the Foo Fighters were. And the other opener was Eddie Vedder's wife's band. So Eddie Vedder was playing drums in his wife's band with a wig on.
Love Eddie.
And so So then the final band was, because it's Mike Watt, he's just a bassist. That's all he is. The final band was Dave Grohl on drums, Mike Watt on bass, of course, Pat Schmear on guitar, and Eddie Vedder on vocals.
Oh shit!
So it was this crazy super group, and everybody in school was. I was in college at this point. Everybody in school was begging me for. It was complete sold out in this tiny little club. So I had a shirt from that show. Damn. It was like a 12 show tour, their very first tour. So Dave Grohl sees me in that shirt, and this is now the Foo Fighters are huge now. Big on MTV, like just probably the top rock and roll band in America by that point. And he sees me. I'm just coming down a hall, like towards the green room, and he's walking the other way. And he spots my T-shirt, and he's like, "I haven't seen that shirt in like 10 years." He was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. You were at that show." And then we just shot the shit for a little bit. And
that's amazing.
And yeah, I got to meet Chris Novoselic. He was at some other thing about 10, 15 years later, like way after his musical career. But I'm a professional, so I don't, like I said, Dave Grohl approached me. Right. I don't approach any celebrities. Like I'm going to grin and smile at you or shake your hand right. if you come by me, but I'm not going to ask for your autograph or anything.
Right.
So I knew I was working with Chris Novoselic, but I was like, unless I just happen to run into him, I'm not going to say anything. So he's coming down the stairs, and I was coming up the stairs from where the bathrooms were. And I'm like, oh, he's right. It was just me and him. I got to say something, because I picked up a bass guitar because of him. Because of Nirvana. Like the first bass lick I ever learned was Come
Which one?
As You Are.
Come As You Are?
Yeah. And so I had to tell him that, and then he starts fingering Come As You Are as we're talking. It was awesome. So, those are some highlights. I mentioned Michael Jordan. The one thing I'll say about that was they had just bought the Wizards, him and Karl Malone. And Karl Malone comes in. We do an interview with him. It's just him. Just a normal type of interview, everything goes fine. Before Michael Jordan comes in, his handlers come in and completely dress us down. They said, when Michael gets here, do not look him in the eye, do not touch him, do not ask to shake his hands, do not ask for an autograph, all this stuff. And we're like, oh, okay. I mean, we are professionals. We're not gonna ask him for autographs. But we're looking at the audio guy, because the audio guy's got to put his microphone on. We're like, you have to touch him. What are you going to do?
God.
So, but Michael Jordan comes in a couple minutes later with his hand out to each one of us to shake our hands.
That's cool.
And we're all just like, we were just told not to shake his hand. So we're all like just trepidatiously like, oh, okay. But he was warm and nice as could be. I don't know what's up with his handlers.
Maybe they were, my mind went to, maybe he was a little nervous, or was he past the nerves that he seemed to display, in my mind at least, in public at times as a younger player. Maybe they were just trying to avoid him in a media environment being like nervous or something.
Yeah, but I think it's all about just putting distance between you and him. Whether it's necessary or not. I think there's probably situations he walks in where he's very comfortable, like in a sports arena that he'd played before as a Bull. Yeah, didn't play for the Wizards yet. He started playing for them after he bought them. But he was in a place where he was probably comfortable. But I bet you're right. There's probably other places where he is not always as comfortable. In front of the
protocol. Just try to minimize any nerves.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so I took offense to it until he walked in. Then I was like, because he was so nice, I was like, I guess I'm not offended.
That's amazing. Sounds like a fascinating career. And so like you said, you've been on the inside in politics.
Yeah.
And so my next question to you, I guess, is how has political media changed? It's a big question. Where do you want to go with that?
Yeah, it's a really big question. So, I think the big arc that we've seen, I was you were probably a little kid during the original Gulf War when Saddam invaded Kuwait. Right. That was when we first had 24-hour news stations. That was the first time that things really people actually were tuning in, and it still really was back then, just very much, reporting the facts, from the front lines, just giving people the best information they possibly could. But as time went on, supporting a 24-hour news station, costs a lot of money. And, you have to get the ratings for the money to come in, for the commercials to pay for this 24-hour news. So you started to see it get more, sensationalist. You started to see like CNN aired Crossfire, which was Tucker Carlson's first show. It was him and I forget what the other
John Stewart.
This happened to John Stewart. That viral thing happened on Crossfire. John Stewart was the guest. I forget who the Democrat host was. It was Tucker Carlson and a Democrat. That was the whole idea of Crossfire. So then they would have other guests come in. But so like the network started to understand, like, you get people talking, partisan politics, you start getting some ratings to come in here. That was one of their most popular shows. And so you started to see more editorializing. You started to see more, this is before the days of YouTube and viral stuff, but you started to see more like, you got to tune in because, this could happen type of stuff on a news station. So, that was when it first really started like drifting away from just presenting us facts and really trying to give us, not necessarily a narrative yet, but definitely entertainment. Politics is entertainment, which is where we started going wrong. Because what's entertaining, not like just talking about some policy. What's entertaining is the mudslinging, is, the name calling, is the...
I got to think on that. Yeah, I guess so. For most people, yeah.
Yeah, it's those, pithy, underhanded remarks.
John Kennedy, that's his name, right? And the senator.
That John Kennedy, yeah, Senator Kennedy,
the current one.
Yeah.
Isn't that his name? I think from Louisiana. Yeah. He's just so good for little clips on TV.
One-liners. Yeah, exactly. So it really started to become more like that. I mean, no one knew, like, C-SPAN made stars out of everybody in Congress and in the House and Senate. But most people still can't name, anyone outside their own senators and the real famous ones. But nobody used to know any of them. But like now they're on TV 24 hours a day. So, it started to really kind of pervert the way news worked. Trying to go for the ratings. But the other problem was, you've got these 24-hour news stations. This is before Fox really came on. You had a really big right-wing market on radio. So, you would tune into the cable networks for, standard news, some editorializing, like things starting to get a little bit more interesting. But you would tune into Rush Limbaugh to get like the conspiracy type stuff, or the the doomsday type stuff,
the sermon, maybe.
Yeah, and like the really nasty stuff that was being said towards people like Pelosi and whatnot, like his big targets throughout his career. That right-wing media really grew from the radio. And, as that started getting bigger and Rush Limbaugh started making a big name for himself, you did start having more, radio personalities kind of come up, coming into the podcast type of stuff.
Was he a jerk?
He was a massive jerk, but people loved him. He was like a lovable jerk. He was an entertaining guy. He was kind of like, a proto-Trump. Like, he would come up with nicknames for people and get people to really kind of just tune in because it was entertaining and it was fun, especially if you didn't like the same people he didn't like, then it was actually really fun. But it has for it, especially on the radio, for you to get people to tune in, it has to be, completely out there. Like whether it's true or not, it just has to be able to grab your attention, and have you tune in day after day on the radio. So,
right.
so it really did become more about personality, politics, and mudslinging and stuff. But then, so you've got people like Rush Limbaugh making big waves now. So the only way to counter that was left-wing radio never took off. There was nobody that you could say was successful on the radio from the left. I guess Howard Stern now
Right, but nothing politically.
Yeah, he was
He's
never
political
political
now.
before. Now he is.
Yeah.
But so you had the major networks have to start countering that narrative from Rush Limbaugh. So that was a wedge that sort of started driving them more towards the left, or at least to correcting him, or opposing what he just said. And you would have, they would invite Democrats on the air to say, oh, no, that's actually not what the policy is. We're gonna do this, not what he just said. So, you started to get, because all these fireballs are being thrown from the right on radio, you see the network start to drift to the left. And, CNN, I would say, probably tried to resist it for a while, but then Fox News pops up and MSNBC. So now you have these 24-hour news networks that are politically oriented, that they're biased,
right.
that they are unabashedly biased. I mean, I think MSNBC would try to maybe touted itself for a long time as still presenting, real news. But, then you've got, Rachel Maddow and people that are really just truly Democrats, and they're not trying to hide it at all. Joy Reid now and stuff, people like that are on to really kind of balance out the the Gutfelds and the Bill O'Reilly was one of the first big Fox stars.
Right.
They ended up having to.
I used to like him.
Yeah, I used to listen to Bill O'Reilly. There was a news channel in DC that Don and Mike were like the main guys on it. Like they were like the morning radio guys. This is before Sirius XM, before it had Howard Stern, it had Opie and Anthony, I think. But then at night it would be political. Bill O'Reilly had a show there, and I didn't know anything about him, but the first time I ever really heard him was on the radio. And one thing that he did, which I agreed with 100%, was he would talk about judges around the nation that were really lenient on child predators for some reason. And it was kind of like a real eye-opener to me. It was like the sentences for people that were found guilty of horrible crimes with kids and rapists, with women. They would get like a slap on the wrist. And he was really kind of at the forefront of like shedding light on this. So I'll always respect him for that. I mean, he and I obviously are two different sides of the aisle, but I absolutely respect him for bringing light to that. And that this is way before we knew anything about Epstein and all that. But it was just like Bill O'Reilly was one of the first people to really be talking about what's going on in the nation when it comes to this. And I 100% agree. Sentences for people that mess with kids need to be way more stringent. Like, I'm not sure they can be rehabbed. There's so much.
You need the message needs to be there for people who would consider that. The sentence has to be strict to just for deterrence.
Be incredibly strict. I mean, there's so many reoffenders. It's like, are we really rehabbing these people? I mean, these people are master manipulators. They can't manipulate a probation panel, or not, parole panel. I'm sure they know what they want to hear.
Yeah.
So I like Bill O'Reilly for that. So I probably tuned into his Fox show. Like one thing I used to take pride in, and this is before I really knew. One of the reasons why I followed you all along was because you were talking about being raised in a liberal family and always being on the left and voting for, the Democrat candidate, but you were looking at other options now. You're looking at looking for your political identity. And I had a switch like that when I turned around 30, because I was raised conservative, but I was always more progressively minded. But I was a single issue voter. I used to vote, for whatever the pro-life candidate was, sometimes, so when I really kind of started to see things that I believed in, like gay marriage and legalization of marijuana being picked up by the Democrats, then I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll start voting Democrat, and really kind of following the, because it's really tough. I know you were looking at voting for Kennedy this time around. It's really tough voting third party. It's really tough voting for the libertarian candidate who back in those days was like Ralph Nader or someone that is not gonna win.
Right. Exactly.
So when the Democrats really kind of came to where I was like, okay, I'm happy to vote for someone who's actually going to get in office. But yeah, so I saw my political identity sway, and so that really drew me to you, because it's very fascinating when somebody has that. That it's not an identity crisis, but it's a come to Jesus moment.
It can be. I think it can be called an identity crisis. Who am I? Trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I won't dispute that.
Yeah.
I won't dispute that at all.
Yeah. So no, that's why I find you interesting. But we don't really we don't agree on our candidates coming up in this election, but I'm still, like you said, we've kind of developed a little bit of a friendship over the last couple of years, and I'm not the type of Democrat who's gonna write somebody off. Right. My whole family votes for Trump. This will be the third time around. They're all gonna vote for Trump. So I love them to death. I see them all the time. We talk politics sometimes. Coming out to them was a bit. It didn't. Well, you know what? It's an interesting thing. So when they didn't really know where my politics stood until Trump, until 2016, until the 2016 election. That's when my whole family kind of understood where I stood now, which was opposed to where they stood. I really respected my dad.
Just in terms of the guy, at least.
Yeah, well, they were all gonna. Well, I was surprised they were gonna vote for Trump, because at the time, I mean, there were 17 candidates running in the Republican primary that year, and it was like, there's no way Trump's gonna.
Yeah, that was such a fascinating time.
It was very fascinating,
and it's always fascinating, I guess. But this guy has been fascinating, and that was.
Yeah, it's very fascinating, it really is. But so I would talk to my parents and family about the other candidates, like who are they going for? Some of them were Jeb guys, some of them were, Rubio guys, some of them were,
Cruz
for somebody else. But as those all started to fall away, they started talking about Trump in a way that was more like supportive, and I was like, wait, you guys really aren't planning on voting for him, right? Like, there's not, you got to be kind of kidding me, right? But they started to. It was a very odd thing to see, because they were all opposed to him, like I was. I like John McCain. I liked George W. Bush. I think he was a buffoon, obviously, in a lot of ways, but he was a a uniter, not a divider.
We're talking about personality and likability.
Yeah. No, I like the guy. So, Yeah, but anyway, so I was like, man, I don't see these people who I was raised by voting for someone as coarse as Donald Trump. You know, with the
Mhm.
history that we knew he had, growing up in the Northeast. You know, our family's from New York. You probably heard about all this stuff because you're from New Jersey.
I'm going to just briefly interrupt to just say
Yeah,
this is another parallel in the same way that you grew
yeah,
up listening to Nirvana and I did. I come from the
yeah.
East. I have friends and family in the real estate world, and I know the stories, and they
Mhm.
weren't good.
No, no, and I know, you know, I'm a contractor. You know, I know a lot of contractors, and I work in New York a lot. New York's a real more of a union town than DC is, but you know, I heard the stories. You know, I heard, you know, a lot of really damning stuff about him way before he was talking about politics.
100%. 100%.
You know, so like, you know, and just like things, you know,
The guy
I
had
would,
a terrible reputation as far as the
yeah,
people that I know. He's
yeah,
selling mattresses, he's selling steaks, he's selling what, which is fine, but there was something laughable about it, and
yeah,
there was the whole reputation wasn't good.
yeah. I mean, when he would stiff contractors, he would have someone put in a massive marble floor in a new building, you know, and then they would bill the Trump organization, then Trump wouldn't pay. And then they would have to sue Trump, but then Trump had so much more money than them. Trump would just like outlast them in court, and they would run out of money, and they'd have to go home empty-handed. And I'm just like, who does, like, what type of person does that? Why would you ever give that type of person power?
That
And you
is
know,
really profound. Like I acknowledge that.
yeah,
That's sick.
yeah,
And I'd love to hear the explanation for that, other than because
yeah.
I can't imagine there is one other than
He's so there's a movie coming out. I think it's coming out in October, which is going to show Trump's early years with I think Roy Cohn.
Mhm.
I think his mentor was Roy Cohn. I think that's his first name. Um,
Yeah,
and that's Roy Cohn is, you know, a real incendiary guy. You know that he's responsible for a lot of the ways Trump is now, where it's just like, just say something enough times, people are gonna believe it. You know, don't ever admit you did anything wrong.
right. The guy
You know,
trained him.
yeah. So you know, this movie, this will be interesting. As I guess it's going to be the October surprise. We don't
Right.
know. We'll see. But you know, so those early years with Trump, I mean, he was just, you know, stepping all over everyone that he could, and you know, he's now, you know, his kids are supposed to be more in charge. You know, obviously, you know, I think since he became president in 2016, you haven't really seen him doing anything day to day in the Trump work that I've been aware of. You know, he passed that off to his kids, and it seems like that's where it is. You know, so there hasn't been a lot of controversy coming out of that, um, you know, since 2016, really. Um, but you know, yeah, all those stories, you know, growing up, you know, that we heard. So like, yeah, Trump had a really big reputation that, like you said, was not good at all. And you know, I heard him on Howard Stern, you know, talking about Rosie O'Donnell. Like I heard him talking about going into the, you know, the beauty pageant locker rooms and stuff with Howard Stern. And Howard Stern used to be crude as hell,
Okay.
and Howard and Trump would outdo Howard Stern a lot,
Right.
and they would kind of have this one-upmanship, and you never know what Trump is making up, but um, you know, it was like, man, this guy is just a pig. I mean, you know, the stuff that we know about Bill Clinton now, I wouldn't vote for Bill Clinton now,
Right.
knowing how much of a pig
It's
he was,
interesting.
you know, knowing that he went to, you know, uh on, you know, Epstein's plane as many times as he
Right.
did. And, I know he's got stories, explanations for it all, but you know, it's just it's par for the course with Bill, and same with Trump though. You know, I mean, you know, all of the it's so interesting. You know, all the stuff with Epstein that came out, and one of the biggest things was, you know, from the mid '90s to the early 2000s, Trump and Epstein were like boys and hung out all the time. And, you know, that Epstein's base was in New York City, even though he, you know, had his island. And there's a lot of stories that, accusations that have come out against Trump, being involved with that. And, one thing we know for a fact is that Virginia Giuffre, I don't know how you pronounce her last name, Giuffre. She was like
victim.
the main victim.
Yeah.
She was recruited from Mar-a-Lago. So how in the hell do you recruit? And Epstein and Trump had a bit of a falling out because Epstein was trying to recruit another girl from Mar-a-Lago, and her family complained. But who knows? There's probably many other girls between Virginia and that last one, or before Virginia. So how are you recruiting girls out of Mar-a-Lago and Trump not know about it? Trump is quoted as saying, talking about Epstein, this is when they were friends and hanging out all the time. He was like, Epstein likes beautiful girls as much as I do, and he likes them on the younger side. Right. I mean, Trump spilled it right there, and he was hanging out with them. So I mean,
the guy always says the truth, and this is what I don't want to cut. I don't want to cut to it, but and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but a former guest once said he's ahead of this deep state operation, but they don't like him because he says it plainly. So
you wonder if you want to give Trump credit for trying maybe to raise an alarm then, and just didn't do it in a way that was overt.
Oh, I don't even mean that he was necessarily trying to do anything righteous.
Yeah.
But that the guy one of the questions
he can't help himself. He can't help himself but say.
One of the questions we'll get to, and I do hope I didn't take you too far off your track, but one of the questions I want to get to is he wrong? We'll come back to that question though.
Yeah.
So Epstein.
Oh, well, yeah. So, I mean, but that's pretty much it with Epstein. I think we 100% need to find out as much as we can about his little black book and who was on the island, who was on it. Yeah, we have the manifest. We know who was on the plane, and not the QAnon manifest. We have the real manifest. We know, Tom Hanks was never on the plane. Barack Obama was never on the plane. They're on the QAnon manifest, but they're not on the real manifest. So we know enough, and we've got his what do they call the woman that finds the girls for
Ghislaine?
Ghislaine or Ghislaine, but there's a word like major domo or something, whatever the word is. But we have her. She knows so much.
Safest woman in the world.
We haven't gotten anything out of her at all.
Yeah.
Like I'm almost like ready to waterboard her.
Right.
I mean, we need to get some information. Yeah. Like one of the darkest days was the day we learned that Epstein committed suicide. I was just like, Jesus Christ, they let that guy get out so easy. Are you kidding me? I mean, it was insane. So yeah, but anyway, that's my 2 cents. When it comes to Epstein, but I think that we've got to really look at what so just to go back to like just the way Trump presents things, the way Trump sells things. Trump, and I think you've even stated this, that one of the reasons why you're going to vote for him this time is because he was good on the economy before, and because of his successes as, president the first time around. And, when you look at the economy that Trump had, there's not a single metric. Well, there is one metric. There's one metric from Barack Obama to Trump that actually went up. The rate changed. It spiked. Everything else went on the exact same track. Stock market, same track. Jobs, same track. Wages, same track. GDP, same track. The one thing that spiked was consumer confidence. And as soon as Trump got in office, consumer confidence spiked. And that's because of the way that Republicans believed in him, never believed in Obama. but they believed in Trump. So confidence in America went up, but that was all the Republicans who could never sign on with the Obama economy finally saying, oh, the economy is going to be good now. So that bump was just Republicans coming on board to the economy. And that's it's important to have, you know, a high consumer confidence. But, you know, that's it's generally a meaningless, like, it doesn't mean anything for anybody's pocketbooks. It's just saying, yeah, that people are confident in the economy. But every other single metric went up at the exact same rate. You know, one of the first things that really bugged me about Trump when he got into office was him touting black unemployment. Like, he had gotten black unemployment down to the lowest level of all time, which is true. But Barack Obama had dropped it 9%. Trump only dropped it an additional 1.7%.
In the same time period?
No. In like the first 3 months. First 3 or 4. The first time Trump ever mentions black unemployment is like with like 4 months into his term. Right. Before any of his policies were even implemented. You could have left.
We did it, everyone.
Yeah, you could have left the presidential, you know, the Oval Office empty, and we still would have seen the economy go in the same direction. Like, he didn't change anything, except for consumer confidence. You know, and the economy. You know, one thing about, you know, the you know, Barack Obama's economy was that we had, you know, record months of job growth. It was like something like 70 some or 80 some months of job growth that actually broke during Trump's first year, second year. It was the first time that broke, that we didn't have job growth. I'm not saying it was necessarily Trump did wrong, but I'm just saying, like, there's absolutely zero reason to give Trump any credit for any of that those first couple years, because the economy was going gangbusters. You know, the few things that he did on the economy, you know, the tax reform that he did, which did lower taxes for most people, not just the rich, very, very much the rich, but it did lower taxes for a lot of other people. You know, that was a big thing. That didn't happen until much later. Their big focus, if you remember, in the beginning was overturning Obamacare.
Right.
That was their big focus. And John McCain, you know, famously did the thumbs down, and then that was it. And then they got onto the taxes. And they were working on sustainability every week.
Right. Infrastructure week was pretty long.
How many times did they announce, you know, this is sustainability week?
Right.
They never got any sustainability done. But so Trump's economy, to me, was all smoke and mirrors. It was all his the way he sold himself. Like, he took credit for it. Just like he takes credit for ISIS. He took credit for, again, and this was 6 months into his presidency, you know, right before. So Trump had been elected president. During Obama, if you remember, the Republicans had forced sequestration during the Obama term. You know, it was their way of saying, you know, we're going to tighten our purse strings because, you know, we're in a recession. They, you know, Obama got Obamacare through, but then the Republicans were like, we're not going to sign on to anything else. You know, we're putting us into sequestration, which just basically cuts the budget across the board for everything in the government, including the military. So sequestration was running out right towards the end of Obama's term. So I think it lifted like literally maybe the last year at some point. But one of the things that Obama was working on was the new budget for the military. And Obama had proposed $650 billion increase for the military. You know, if you remember Trump running, saying, you know, we're out of ammunition, we're out. You know, so all the crazy stuff Trump would say. We were never out of ammunition, but we were in sequestration. So we, you know, everything was tight. But as we were coming out, Obama was like, okay, we're going to put $650 billion in the military. You know, all the other, you know, departments and agencies were getting money back and stuff. So Trump raised it, instead of $650 billion, he raised it $700 billion. So he added another $50 billion on top. So he did do that. But then, so but he takes credit for all of that. Obama was doing it anyway, coming out of sequestration, but Trump takes credit for all of it. So Trump gets elected. December of 2016, ISIS's caliphate is finally in a place where we can do launch an offensive. So Secretary Ash Carter under Obama launches an offensive. I want to say it was December 10th in 2016. And I remember thinking Trump had already been elected. I remember thinking like, Jesus, why? And it was kind of without a lot of fanfare. I was like, Trump's going to take credit for all this. Trump's going to take credit for this offensive. Trump's going to say this was all his doing. I'm like, why are you doing it now? Like, why? Maybe you could have done it before the election, but it was like December 10th. Obama's got 1 month left in office. So we finally launched this offensive on ISIS. I want to say it was in Raqqa and forget what the other city was. But they finally were surrounding them, and they got them pigeonholed, and we were moving in. And this is the operation. This is the offensive that did wipe out their caliphate. So as they get closer to the city, we had the rules of engagement needed to be changed, because as you get closer to the city, you are going to take more civilian casualties. And just like a lot of, with Hamas and stuff now, I mean, surrounding yourself with civilians is a great way to stop America from really bombing the hell out of you. So, they were in the city with a lot of civilians. And the one thing that Trump did, he changed the rules of engagement at the last step. We were right there. We had gotten there. This is now like, April of 2017. Trump had been in office, a few months. Maybe it was early summer. But Trump changed the rules of engagement so that you could bomb closer to civilians, which I think anybody would have done. And Ash Carter is gone now. He died, but he wrote a book about this offensive that wiped out ISIS. And one of the things in the book that he says was he gives Trump credit. He gave Trump credit for not changing, not interfering with anything. Trump let it go, do what it was supposed to do. Trump did change the rules of engagement, which, I'm fine giving him credit for that. But like any president would have done that. So again, like he touts that he wiped out ISIS, and that was Secretary Ash Carter and Obama that launched that offensive. Yes, it ended a few months into your presidency, but it's amazing. And I think you might have caught this a little bit during the debate, because what you and I were both kind of live tweeting during the debate, and I can't. You kept saying how Kamala was doing a good job, or Kamala, and I kept saying no, she's
at what she was doing, not necessarily at being presidential.
Yeah, no, I think from the not the layman. I'm not calling you a layman, but from like your average American, she probably did a pretty good job. To me, she was failing miserably, like a lot of Democrats do, because they don't nail Trump on the things that they should be nailing him on. She did this kind of wishy-washy thing with tariffs. She didn't even say the word tariffs, but she was like, Trump's going to have this, what I'm calling the, foreign goods tax, or whatever she called it. She never said the word tariff. No one knew what the hell she was talking about. Trump did, and then he got into tariffs. But I was like, why don't you just say to the American people, Trump tells you that his tariffs are being paid by China, that we're getting billions and billions of dollars from China because of Trump's tariffs. China doesn't pay our tariffs. We pay our tariffs. Right. A tariff is on the importer. So when we put tariffs on Chinese goods, that means our companies that are importing these goods have to pay this tariff to the U.S. government. That's what a tariff is. No foreign country is ever going to be paying any of the Trump tariffs. He's still saying that this campaign, on the trail right now. He's still getting away with this. and for Democrats not to adequately push back on this just incenses me. I really can't put up with it. But yeah, so like Trump's economy, the tariffs, when COVID happened, the tariffs had just kind of gotten started. I don't blame Trump for COVID. I don't blame Trump for the economy, crashing during COVID. If I was going to look at the Trump's economy, I would look at the first 3 years. I wouldn't count 2020 really at all. And Trump didn't do anything to really harm the economy until those tariffs started coming in and started a trade war, which meant China now was going to stop buying soybeans from our farmers. And then we had rotting soybeans out in these fields. And we had to subsidize. Trump started subsidizing, which is socialism, subsidizing the farmers that he had wrecked because of this trade war. And, so I just don't want to give him credit for the economy in any way that it isn't reality. He did some good things in office. Like I really liked his, right to try that he did with experimental medications. I think that's a fantastic thing. I've always thought, why the hell, if it's out there, if you're going to die in 3 months, why can't you just try whatever is new on the market? I love that. I think that was fantastic. I think another so just to finish with his economy. So his tariffs started kicking in, COVID happens. And COVID, Xi Jinping had said, we're going to retaliate, just wait. And then COVID happened. So, I mean, like the conspiracy theorist in me is like,
what happened, Rush?
Would they let it out in this lab on purpose? Like what? I mean, it's crazy to think they would do that, but because it would be on their own people.
Well, well, that would require the assumption that the tariff does harm them, right?
No, so this is the thing with the tariffs. What the reason why a tariff harms a foreign country? So, like for instance, Canada has like a 400% tariff on milk because they want their dairy cows to be used, and they always have been. It's not like they were importing a crap ton of milk from somewhere, but they just put this giant tariff on it just to prevent anyone from going and buying milk from Minnesota or whatever. So there are tariffs that are there for a reason. China was retaliating because we had these agreements that one of my clients was the U.S.-China Policy Forum. And we had a lot of diplomacy going on with China, especially during the Bush and the Obama presidencies. Most people then understood that China wasn't an enemy. China was a rival, an economic rival. And the best thing for us to do is to make them a strong trade partner. Like we know we're gonna buy cheaper stuff. We're even with the tariffs, we're still buying stuff from China. A, because we don't have the manufacturing capabilities for it, but B, it's still cheaper to get it from China. So we're going to do that for a long time. But yes, no, the trade war started where China started retaliating because I think in the steel industry in particular, Trump and if you're gonna do targeted tariffs, he probably should have stopped there. He probably just should have done steel tariffs because our industry in America, especially in like the Pennsylvania region, our steel industry got decimated because China had taken their steel import prices and just completely undercut us by so much that our steel industry collapsed because we just couldn't compete. So, I would have done that one. I could have been talked into that one to say, let's get our steel. We've got steel. We're sitting on steel, similar to we're sitting on coal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not waste this resource. If we don't do this now, this steel may never come out of the ground. So, yeah, I'm not completely against tariffs, but so the idea is we put this tariff on you. It's because we are going to stop buying these things from you. That's really the idea. China doesn't pay it. China gets hurt because there are going to be sectors of the industries that he puts tariffs on that we hurt. We hurt them financially because we stop buying from them. But what this whole trade war, and this is why most economists really don't like tariffs. And even though I said that I might be able to be convinced to put a tariff on steel, I don't know. I'd have to hear all the arguments. But most economists don't like tariffs because it's a world economy now. Trump got China to take away, their business from us. They started buying soybeans from other countries. They started introducing more trade routes to Russia, to Iran. Even when we put, sanctions on Russian oil, China's been buying their oil. So like you start these trade wars, it's going to bite you in the ass some way. It's like, I think going all the way back to NAFTA and stuff, we really hurt our manufacturing industry by allowing companies to, use overseas labor and import stuff from overseas, car parts, all kinds of stuff. But we absorbed that. Like we started, I don't know if you ever heard this before, but America is more of a service economy. We're more of a service economy than a manufacturing economy. And we are incredible innovators. We still innovate, we still invent, we still patent all kinds of stuff. And the world looks to us to still be, using our capitalistic fervor to come up with, the next product. And then China will copy them without giving any intellectual rights. But so, it disrupted the current world order. And it may have helped our steel industry. It didn't help any other industry. Most economists will say that Trump's tariffs added about 12 or 13% to our inflation rate. So now, our inflation rate only went from 2 to 8. So it went up 6 basis points. But of that 6 basis points, 12% of that was Trump's tariffs. A lot of that was supply chain from, the end of COVID. The rest of that was Trump's 2-year deal with OPEC. I'm sure you've heard me talk about this because I talk about it all the time on Twitter. Trump did what was, the oil industry in America, the world. He did the right thing to go over and talk to OPEC about slowing production because oil prices were tanking. I don't know if you remember hearing oil, but barrels of oil, like we were having issues just storing it. So barrels of oil were trading at $0, which sounds crazy, but apparently they were. Gas prices didn't reflect that. Gas prices only went down to the low 2s, maybe 190 or something like that. It should have gone down further. But oil needed. The oil industry was getting crushed during COVID because no one was going to work, no one was traveling. And OPEC hadn't really changed what they were doing. So Trump went over there and negotiated a deal with them to slow production. They dropped production by, certain number of millions of barrels a day. But what he did that was so ill-sighted was make it a 2-year deal. This was in This was in like April of 2020. So this was still in the beginning of COVID when we were still talking about, 2 weeks to slow the spread. Just talking to any epidemiologist, like they know how viruses work, but it's not going to be a pandemic for 2 years. Viruses mutate too quickly for that. They become. Oh yeah, sorry, we're at an hour.
No. Yeah, it was just a phone call that I wasn't expecting. I'm not answering it.
Right on.
Sorry about
that.
But
viruses become endemic fairly quickly. Definitely not 2 years. So it just was inexplicable that he made that deal a 2-year long deal. So that's April 2020. That 2-year deal didn't end until April 2022. And if you look at gas prices, they peaked in April 2022. That's when gas was $5 a gallon because of this deal, because they knew they should have ramped up production by now because we had all been back to work for a year by this point. But they didn't. They had the cover of that deal to keep it low, because as prices went up, they started making a crap ton of money. So, they were trying to recoup their losses from the COVID era, but they just got to point to Trump's deal. They're like, look, and Trump touted that deal. It's all, you can look up articles about it. Like that, Trump was very proud of that deal. Why the hell did he make it for 2 years? It doesn't make any sense. So, our oil prices went through the roof because of this deal, because OPEC had dropped their output by so much. Most Republicans will tell you it's because Biden canceled they say he shut down the Keystone pipeline. There was no pipeline yet. Keystone exists already. Keystone is in operation. Keystone XL is what Biden canceled. It was 8 years out from completion. There was nothing about what Biden did that raised the price of oil. They also say that, Biden stopped pumping oil on federal lands and whatnot, which again is not true. What they did was they paused new leases on federal land. There was something like 3,000 leases on federal land that had not been used yet. So we were nowhere even close to capacity or anywhere close to where this would have affected the market. What they wanted to do was look at, the way that we priced federal land out, hadn't been changed in literally 100 years, I think. So they wanted to bring it up to market prices, for federal land. So that might have brought up a tick. But again, there was 3,000 that we still haven't used any of those new leases. They started reissuing new leases literally 3 months after this. So, I think that the whole Trump was good for the economy, and the Biden economy sucks. The Biden economy, is their, inflation's their fault, and home prices are their fault.
Is it not?
No, not at all.
Okay.
So there's 5 ways to increase inflation. 1 is supply chain. 2 is, the people will always put number 1, printing money. So increasing the amount of cash in an economy. And
he did not do that?
No, both Biden and Trump did that.
Did Biden not do it with poorer judgment?
No, because when we were coming out of COVID, or in the thick of COVID, we had the what do they call it? Not sustainability. The
Inflation Reduction Act.
The Inflation Reduction Act was Biden, but it's stimulation of the economy. There's another word for it. I'm not remembering, but so Trump did $2 trillion, I want to say, and Trump did the PPP loans. So we all got PPP loans in 2020. If you ran, you ran it, you run a business.
No, I don't run a business. I'm an employee.
Oh, okay. So anyone who owned a business got a PPP loan. So I got a PPP loan. So there was $2 trillion, the PPP loans and stuff under Trump, that all made a lot of sense. Then the Biden stimulus was another $2 trillion. So you can't say this $2 trillion caused more inflation than this $2 trillion. It's putting more money into the economy either way.
Yeah, I mean, you can judge each action on its own in the in the context that it occurs in, I would say, but I get your point that it was part of a pattern, a package of things that I guess what you're saying is they would have happened either way. Or I hear your point, but you don't want to totally divorce an actor from the consequences.
No. Well, I'm saying you just can't say Trump's 2 trillion was better somehow than Biden's 2 trillion. Either way, when it comes to inflation, either way, you printed $2 trillion. Either way.
But you might say, but someone could say, but the Biden's 2 trillion wasn't as necessary. And so that's why I asked the question about judgment, because you hear people say, defending Trump, of course, that it was just not necessary, Biden's perhaps, but that's probably just partisan spin.
Yeah, it's more partisan spin. I mean, like I said, when it comes to inflation, printing money is one of the ways to increase inflation. So both did it in the equal amounts. The other thing was that Trump's stimulus and Biden's stimulus both fill that printing money factor in inflation. Another factor in inflation is supply and demand. So, the oil, we had a massive supply and demand issue with oil. So, Elon said something recently about how the only way to, cause inflation is by printing money. That's just, for a guy as smart as Elon, like that, that's just ignorant. Supply and demand. I mean, you take one macroeconomics class, you learn all about supply and demand. So, we had a lot of inflation due to the Trump 2-year deal with OPEC production. Now, the other factor, and this is the last thing I'll say about his economy. The other factor that we're still feeling today, because inflation's gone down to 3%, I want to say now. It's never reversed. Prices went up and stayed up. They're just only going up 3% now versus 8%. So we're still inflationary, which we've been to 2% for forever. 3% isn't bad as far as economists would say. But the other main factor is home prices. And what happened with home prices is, you might recall, so during COVID, home prices were, or the interest rate was 2%. Which is the lowest. I'm
familiar with, yes.
Yeah, the lowest it's ever been. What did you get?
My timing wasn't great, but I got out of it with my shirt and hat. So, but tell me.
Yeah, I refied down to 2. I was at 4 something. I refied down to 2. But anyway, so interest rates were lowest they'd ever been in America for home loans. So we started seeing some inflationary pressure. This is maybe before COVID. And the Fed wanted to raise rates. And you might remember Trump famously demanding they didn't raise rates. And they listened to him and kept rates really, really low, which caused a massive amount of people refinancing and buying new real estate, new homes, new real estate. What really hurt us the most, though, because everyone loves low interest rates. What really hurt us the most, though, is that private equity went from 8%. So private equity has always been in real estate, commercial real estate especially, but residential real estate. So in residential real estate, private equity went from 8% of the market to 18% of the market in 2020. And so what that meant was they were flush with cash because of the PPP loans and because of the Trump tax cuts and stuff. And they saw a really good opportunity to invest in homes. So starter homes in particular. So I'll remember we didn't know what it was back then, but we know now. When there were these like cash bids, I remember thinking like, who the hell has all this cash? People bidding like 20% over asking price in cash, like just these insane, bidding wars on homes, starter homes. It was like, who the hell has all this cash that's buying a 3-bedroom townhouse? Like, where did they get all that cash? We now know what that cash was. That cash was private equity. That was the rich investing in starter homes at double the clip, more than double the clip. and asking way over asking price, because what they were doing was they were immediately flipping those homes into rental properties. And so people that, are getting outbid, they don't have a home to move into, they got to keep renting. So the rental market was growing, and private equity was scooping up more and more homes. There's giant conglomerates right now that are buying. If you own a home, you're getting called all the time. You want to sell your home? There's these giant conglomerates now that are buying up tons and tons and tons of real estate. They slowed down a lot because interest rates went up to like 7%. But when it was 2%, they swooped in, bought up all of the real estate they could, which jacked up rents, jacked up home prices. Home prices went through the roof. Trump telling the Fed they couldn't raise rates for so long, even though they were saying there were inflationary pressures from his tariffs and other things. This created a perfect storm. When you have that much inflation, you have to raise rates. You have to raise a rate. That's the one tool the Fed has. We got to raise that base rate. And so now, rates are for purchasing a home mortgage are I think they just dropped to 6%, something like that. But historically, 8% was really, really pretty high for the last couple of decades. I think the last time it was 8% was like in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s. But anyway, so like home prices, you can connect to Trump because he fought the Fed, kept rates low artificially longer than they should have. He gave the rich so much more money to invest during the, his tax plan. Both sides of the aisle need to do something about preventing private equity from buying up starter homes. They tried. There was a bill the Democrats put up 6 months ago. It didn't go anywhere. Like a third of Democrats voted against it. And all the Republicans voted against it. So yeah, I mean, we have to be realistic about the Trump economy. It really wasn't great. He actually harmed us in a lot of ways, long term. Harmed the world. The worldwide inflation had a lot to do with Trump's 2-year deal with OPEC. So
I mean, you don't think that there's any credence to this idea that he represents the unbelievably, ironically, considering his long history.
Yeah.
That he somehow represents the American working class that got sold out by the political class. You think that's because that's obviously the representation that he presents and that his followers believe. And his followers believe it. So you don't think there's anything to that? Because I know when he got elected, Obama said you can't put globalism back in the bag, and Trump, that was his whole shtick, is to put it back in the bag. And so you don't think there's anything positive to say about his intentions, at least, or
to say you want to bring manufacturing jobs back. There's nothing wrong with that. To say you want to do something like that, you have to understand if Americans are going to be manufacturing things that we're currently buying from China or India, it's going to cost a lot more. We're going to be paying, they get paid $2 a day over there. We're getting paid at manufacturing job $20 an hour at least, something like that.
And it's interesting because as a private citizen, whether he gets his ties in China or whatever, like you understand the private incentive is to do that. But I guess the argument from his side for his supporters is, okay, yeah, of course, as a businessman, he'll buy his ties that he manufactures from China. But he's saying, you know what? This deal isn't working. The American middle class has been hollowed out because of it. Is there any wisdom in trying to reverse this?
Long term is going to cost a lot more money. And what are you doing? You're creating manufacturing jobs at the cost for everybody else. The cost for, whatever they're manufacturing is going to cost more for everybody else. So you've created manufacturing jobs, but, looking at our economy right now, unemployment, is historically low. It's been historically low for a while. Trump before COVID, mostly due to the economy that 8 years had run right into Trump. But you know, historically low unemployment. There's a lot of trade jobs now that have been going unfulfilled for a long time. You know, there's a big need for people to go into trade school and learn trades. You know, which is blue like it's better than a manufacturing job. You know, we have jobs, we have needs to fill. You know, we need people to go into those. If you want to do blue collar, you want to work with your hands, learn a trade, go to trade school. There's need. There's been need for a long time, especially in the green energy sector. You know, there's solar jobs in every state in the country. You know, so like we don't need to say manufacturing jobs are this panacea of this is the solution. There's a cost to bring manufacturing back to the U.S.
That's okay. That's a solid point. So I guess my follow-up would be, does Trump then does he not represent getting off the panacea of manufacturing jobs? Is he not otherwise good for American jobs in any meaningful way compared to his predecessor or Biden?
Yeah. So I'll bet you $20 because I think he's going to get elected. I think that the trade winds are going that way. He's an incredible salesman. He's convinced a lot of people, and the Democrats suck at countering. They talk about his coarseness all the time. They don't talk about where he's went wrong policy wise.
Exactly. They don't. You're absolutely right. I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't focused on his coarseness really much at all.
You haven't. No, you haven't. No, you're right. You are different and you are more effective. Go on.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't, your question was about, sorry, go back.
Well, it was about, you know, is he not any better for in terms of jobs overall?
I was going to bet you $20.
Yeah.
Because I think he's going to win. Watch consumer confidence spike because the Republicans get back on board with the economy.
Right.
You know, when you, this is the thing. It's like, if you remember, the last few years of the Obama economy, do you remember hearing like corporations were flush with cash?
Can't say that I do, but I know he had a great economy.
Yeah. Well, they were flush with cash. This part of it wasn't great. They were flush with cash, not investing. They were flush with cash, not doing anything with that cash. They were just stockpiling cash, which helps nobody. You know, at a minimum, you can buy stock, help your stockholders. But you know, they weren't doing anything with this cash. They were sitting on this cash, and and their main excuse for that was, well, we're not confident in the economy. We're not confident in investing. As soon as Trump got elected, you know,
that's something.
They started spending again. And Trump did something else where he allowed offshore money to come back, and everyone was like, oh, they're just gonna like buy their stocks back, which is what they did. They did. They bought their stocks back, which increased stock value and stuff. But so, you know, there's always unforeseen consequences. That there's really hardly anything that Trump did with the economy that didn't have a downside, a massive downside. I mean, even his tax cuts that, you know, it added a shitload to the debt. You know, it's crazy how much, you know, Republicans sort of forgot how much they cared about the debt when Trump was in office. But I mean, there's a book, I think it's called The Two Santa Clauses. And it's how Republicans will lambaste the Democrats about the debt. Whenever a Democrat president is in office, you know, they do sequestration. They'll always, like, you know, start talking about how, you know, your kids are inheriting all this debt, blah, blah, blah. When a Republican's in office, they cut taxes. They drive the debt up. Like they, you know, that's the two Santa Clauses. Like,
I got you.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting thing that Republicans do. You know, So I mean, so that was the last part about Trump's economy was home prices. Home prices
Right.
shooting up have a lot to do with Trump. So and very little to do with Biden. So Biden let the Fed increase rates, which they had to do because inflation was going out of control. Biden, and this is a very interesting thing about Democrats in general. Most of your life you've heard about, the environment and how, fossil fuels are the worst the worst thing, we can be doing for the environment. Biden's pumping more gas than any president ever has. And you haven't heard. What have you not heard from Democrats in the last 2 years? You haven't heard shit about the environment, really, from the Democrats in the last couple of years because they had to eat crow and pump some gas because we had a massive inflation. So the thing about Democrats is they're always going to do the responsible thing. We're still manufacturing wind turbines. We're still manufacturing solar panels. We're still doing all that. But we drilled more gas than any other president in history. So, in my lifetime, what I've seen, since Bill Clinton, I would say, because, I was a little kid when Reagan was in office. And then George H.W. Bush had a recession. So Bill Clinton, from Bill Clinton on, I got to see things from, a more mature standpoint. I just saw a much more responsible governing from Democrats than I have from Republicans. And, right now, what you're hearing from Trump right now, he's promising, no taxes on Social Security. He just today said, or no, maybe that was today. Someone else said you should allow, people to get IRAs with no tax. But anyway, no taxes on Social Security is a new thing that Trump's offering. So the cynic in me is thinking, well, we know that Republicans want to privatize Social Security. So Trump saying there's not going to be any taxes on Social Security might just be, he knows that if they get back in power again, that, Social Security is probably going to get privatized in some way. So, saying no tax on Social Security might just be, it's similar to Biden's whole, we're going to pay your college loans back. It's just sort of, Trump right now, he's giving a lot of shit away. No taxes on tip, no tax, again, which driving up our debt, driving up our deficit. But, Trump right now is desperate to win because he's facing some sentencing if he can't pardon himself. I'm not a big fan of that, the felonies charges. Michael Cohen went to jail for it.
Right.
A lot. This is what you'll see with Trump's circle. People around Trump always go to jail for Trump's crimes.
Right.
But Trump's genius because he doesn't do email. He doesn't text.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah. I mean, so if he's a criminal, he's a genius. If he's a criminal, he's a genius.
Yeah, oh no, he's a genius
Generally.
criminal.
Yeah,
he's a genius criminal. What he did with the Commodore Hotel in New York.
Yeah.
This is in the
we don't. I didn't even want to get into that, honestly, because I want to stay.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
that's fine. Because we went. Look, you gave me a fire hose, and it was a good fire hose, and it was really coherent, and it was dead on the nuts, and it was what you don't hear from Democrats, and it was, we could have had a more dynamic conversation about more things, but instead I got a really comprehensive, I don't want to say lecture because it certainly wasn't a lecture, but comprehensive analysis of his economy and a lot to chew on there. And and I can extrapolate from that detailed tour de force that you just gave me. I can extrapolate that into other areas And I can probably assume that you would make similar arguments for foreign policy or this and that. The point being that he's a great salesman, and that your argument is that ultimately, with all due respect, Brian, you, like many other people, have fallen for his pitch. And for whatever reason, and there are other reasons, and I could say the process I don't like with the Democrats. I could say I don't like the results. I don't like whereas I like the feel of the Trump presidency. I didn't like the results of the Trump presidency. I don't have a similar positive vibe about the Biden presidency domestically and abroad. And then the process of arriving at Harris, all very strange. And coming out of the confusion of the last few years with COVID, so much bizarreness. But importantly, getting from what you've given me tonight is that he's a great salesman. Don't forget it. And maybe I'm giving him too much credit, and I'll just be frank, I wouldn't call myself naive. I read news every day, but I'm not a policy wonk. I couldn't do what you just did. I only talk about feel. I admit that. So what I have to consider here is, and what you wanted to do, and the reason we set this up.
Yeah.
And I look forward to having another one with you if you're ever interested, and we can go back and forth more and have a more of a conversation. But what this was supposed to
we can talk about aliens next time.
Oh, I want to.
But read Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking if you haven't read that before.
No, I haven't. No, you're so knowledgeable. This is the person type of person I wanted to connect with. So I'm grateful. And like I opened up with saying how high quality you are. So I have to consider, have I been hoodwinked or not? And what do I want to do? But the purpose was to get me to consider that. And you've laid the foundation, a really strong foundation for me to reflect. And of course I will, and I have to. I owe that to myself and to the country. So yeah, I've arrived somehow where I have arrived, coming from, I detailed some things that the country's been through, but personally I've been through, especially with the law school and the CRT. Again, none of that's policy wonk. It's a little bit. I got a little taste of detail and actual learning, deep learning. And it turned out that actually pushed me to the right a little bit. But that doesn't mean that if I were to do that deep learning that you clearly have done, and I'm not saying you're not biased or you're perfect or anything, but you clearly have deep learning under your belt in more areas than I have, maybe I would be in a different place if I had done all that learning. So look, have you succeeded? I don't know, man. It's going to be hard, right, to turn me back. You know where I'm at.
Yeah, and we really only went through one sector, basically.
Exactly.
Like you said, we didn't talk foreign policy. We didn't talk about social issues like, abortion or trans. Really,
right. We didn't touch about any of it, and we, on one hand, you could say we should have, and it would have been nice if we did. On the other hand, what we got tonight was economy focused, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. We can do this again if you're interested. I am.
Sure.
So
I think maybe before the election, maybe we should do one more on social issues since we didn't get to talk about social and
foreign policy.
Foreign policy. I think that would be interesting. You were astute in what you said, though. You can apply. You can apply. I mean, I don't just follow. I
right.
You fascinate.
You're not here for my looks.
Well, I saw you getting crap for that recently. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a lot of idiots out there.
It's funny. Yeah.
But anyway, so the astute thing that you said was that you can apply what I just said about the Trump economy and how he's a great salesman and how he takes credit for these things where credit is not due, to foreign policy and to other things, to other areas. Like you said that you can apply that sort of thinking, that sort of drill down kind of thinking to the foreign policy, which I could probably talk for an hour about that as well. But so I really appreciate you giving me this time, Brian. And I'm here. I hope by the tone, I'm here less to convince you. I know we kind of sold this as me convincing you not to vote for Donald Trump. I'm just trying to help you understand more, maybe the perspective that I think we all needed to have. And like I said, the Democrats have done a crap job of giving people the perspective that we really need. Like they kind of let.
Exactly. that's such an important part of this conversation too.
Yeah.
So it's not just that we got an economy great analysis here, deep dive, but it's also that we got an understanding, that a critique of the Democrats, and we'll have to explore that when we talk again as well, about why they're so bad at it, and that is a non-trivial factor as to where I've landed, because it's like you see the criticism, it's so ineffective, and it only supports to a person like me, and there are so many like me, and I hate acknowledging that I don't have a tremendous command of detail. I hate acknowledging it, but I will. But that's the normal person, right? And you're behind the scenes, so you have even more, and you're very dedicated learner. And I don't know. I kind of lost my thought, but what was I saying? Easily sold.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you were saying, like, in regards to the Democrats being really bad at what they do. That is
that doesn't help.
Of their proficiency or their competency.
Exactly. If you take me, a person yearning to be led, a person who doesn't have a tremendous command on his own, and given the sales, I got a great salesman over here, and I got ineffective counterpunchers over here that are really only feeding the salesman's pitch.
Yeah.
That's where I am. Yeah.
No, I'm shocked at how poor they are in general. You know, I think Pete Buttigieg is
super the guy.
Someone who can articulate things very well.
Yeah.
And usually you can tell he has a very well thought out answer to things.
Every time.
Yeah, unfortunately, they just put him in Department of Transportation.
Yeah,
that's not his strength. They should have given him something more public facing, more, you know, press oriented or something like that. But
right.
But yeah, I mean, there are people out there, and he's incredibly knowledgeable. You know, especially with his military service. You know,
I liked him. I was all ready to be a big Mayor Pete guy.
Yeah,
he like, you know, took the victory in Iowa. It was contested, but it was bold, and I liked what he was doing. He always exactly. I'm craving a vision, and that's why that's why I voted for Obama twice.
Yeah,
I sound like I'm doing now.
Obama,
perfect. We can do I'm going to close.
Obama's great. Obama is a rhetorical master. He can tell you exactly what's up. Yeah.
Well, I can close this out on my Twitter shtick, which is to say that's why I voted, and this is real too. So why I voted for Obama twice. That's why I voted for Hillary, because I found her impressive at the time, at least where I was.
Yeah.
And Biden was the exception the first time, where I said it was completely different in that regard. I voted for him because I wasn't comfortable with Trump. Couldn't bring myself to vote for Trump, and I thought, okay, maybe he'll govern like Trump, and without the drama and the coarseness. And I have bought a bill of goods that says that he didn't do a great job, and despite some legislative successes, and that it's been a rough go in the last 4 years, and that between him and Kamala, it's just like, hey, how did we get here?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, and again, I know we're closing out, but there's a lot I could say on all that. But yeah, I mean, I think America had a knee-jerk reaction to Trump beating Hillary, and we're just like, we need, there's two things. One, we need an old white guy to combat another old white guy, but also, like Biden came on saying that he was going to really try to cross the aisle and work with everybody,
and that he wouldn't really serve a second term. And so whether it's Biden missteps or Democrat Party missteps, it's been a bizarre time with all of these things, man.
Republicans really weren't going to play ball ever with Biden, which is a shame. Even on the Mexico, well, that was Trump scuttled the Mexico bill. Republicans actually were going to play ball with Biden on the Mexico border bill. Trump came and torpedoed that, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I thought we'd get more, because Biden knew, 2/3 of Congress,
right,
very well, but I thought we'd see a little bit more. What we got, the what's it called?
We got a hardening of the tensions and the division.
Yeah. Oh no, it hasn't gotten better. It definitely hasn't gotten better.
Right. And so
not at all.
It's a tough time.
And I think one of the reasons why it hasn't gotten better is on the social side. And so we can talk about that next time.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I think the infrastructure. He got infrastructure through.
Right.
You know, that was he. I think he got a couple. I think he got a couple Republicans on that, but it wasn't many.
Right.
But yeah, he got a few things through, and he turned the inflation around, and he got oil prices down. Gas is $3 a gallon right now, which so I think Biden has had successes. He would have had more, if things went a different way with partisan politics. But I think we really need to focus on the next time we talk, we need to focus on the social stuff, and we do need to talk about the election stuff, the previous election stuff, because I mean that is really, like I said, I don't like the charges that he got in New York, even though Michael Cohen went to jail for it. They're not easy for the American public to really kind of grasp. I think they're much bigger fish to fry in regards to charging Trump with things. In other areas. I mean, there are things that are being brought up, but none of it's going to happen this year. Everything got pushed.
What's one example?
Inciting January 6th. I mean,
because I would strongly argue that he did not incite, but we'll save it. It's going to be
a good cliffhanger.
Exactly. Well, feel free to, do you have any final last thoughts that you want to get in at this point?
So everyone go see this Trump movie coming out in October. It's the old, it's the old Trump. It's not going to have anything to do with his presidency. It's going to be all about his mentor and the way Trump really kind of was, and in a way that Brian and I know, Trump pre-Apprentice. The way Trump was in New York as a young mogul, and the way he treated people and why he treats people that way. I think this movie is, I haven't seen it yet. I definitely, know what they're trying to do. I think it's important. It's a movie though. It's not, it's not a documentary, but I would urge people to see it. I think that it's going to be a good insight that a lot of people don't have. I think that, between now and November 5th, just, keep your ears and eyes open and do as much as you can to, really look into things and talk to people. I think what you've done all along is talk to people with opposing ideas and on your podcast. I think even though you've gone MAGA, I think you should keep having, Democrats on your show.
What do you think about What do you think about my title change to Brian Eskow Show? Tell me.
So I love finding my political identity. What's the show called?
Searching for Political Identity.
Searching for political identity. I think that resonates with people.
Yeah. That's what my heart says.
Even if you found it for this election, I think that it's still alive, and it always. I mean, for any moderate, it should always be alive. I don't think there's, there's a possibility I'll vote for a Republican again in my lifetime. There's a possibility. One thing about Maryland is that it's a very sane part of the country. We just had a very popular Republican governor. It's a blue state. Maryland is a blue state, but we can elect very moderate Republicans in Maryland. So I think being a moderate, I think you're always going to be, open to hearing other ideas and open to, candidates from different parties and things like that. So I don't think searching for political identity is dead. I think, until you have a bigger name, I know your uncle or somebody was in.
Yeah. I have an uncle who's very well-known and respected in progressive politics. Richard R.J. Eskow, the 0 Hour.
Okay. So Eskow has some panache to it.
Yes.
So
it really does.
So I mean, it's in the title now. So
right.
I wouldn't get rid of the title yet.
I like it. Yeah. I'm not. Yeah. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everything you've given me. You've given me a lot. And we probably only got to 25, 30% of the material,
Yeah.
but we'll have to do this again. And you've
Yeah. Well,
given me a
thanks
lot.
for letting me get deep on it.
No,
Thanks for
thank you. Thank
coming
you
in
for,
with just a conversation.
yeah,
This was very great.
yeah, I think so too. Couldn't be more grateful for this and for all of it, all the years. I mean, you've been really a friend in the way you've done this. It's just good in good faith, and I really respect it and appreciate it. And thank you so much. And I look forward to our
Yeah.
next talk.
Thanks. Peace,
All
Brian.
right, bud. Later on.
Take care.